afternoon, colleagues. On behalf of ETBI and the Directors of Further Education Training Forum, I welcome you all here today to the launch of two papers that not only outlines the strength of the ETBs, but also their ambition for the continued future growth of further education and training in Ireland. The papers, which we launched today by Minister Niall Collins and Secretary General Jim Breslin from the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, and are launched within the context of the future FET Transforming Education Action Plan 2020-2024. This ambitious plan is built upon the foundations for the FET sector, established through the FET strategy of 2013 to 2019. This strategy brought about many changes to the organisational structures to provide an integrated system of further education and training in Ireland, the success of which can be seen in such areas as the reignition and revitalisation of the apprenticeship and traineeship systems, the close alignment of vocational training to labour market needs, which supported the economic recovery of the period, and embedding of lifelong learning opportunities through flexible models for those reskilling and upskilling. The context for the papers launched today, ETBI's vision for tertiary education and the FET College of the Future, are concerned with the development and transformation of the further education training sector of the current strategic plan, which is laid upon reform through strategic investment, collaboration and innovation, which were the hallmarks of the first strategic plan. These papers are and will be further supported by other research papers and initiatives led by the Directors of Further Education and Training Forum. These include the position paper on community education and active inclusion, the adult safeguarding in further education and training policy, the text 50808 initiative, the TUBER evaluation, which focuses on recognition of prior learning, and the Are You OK mental health campaign for apprentices. These papers and other resources, including a new resource for current traineeships, are available on the ETBI Digital Library, where you can get the most up-to-date information. This event today is of great importance for the sector in presenting a vision for flexible, agile, responsive sector that represents the ETB vision for what the further education and training sector aspires to be. We'll ask you all to share your thoughts on the event today using the Twitter handle #FutureFET. We also welcome your comments on Slido, and you can see the code, which is 926739 on the background for all of our speakers today. So to start our proceedings officially, I'd like to call on Mr. John Carney, co-chair of the Directors of Further Education and Training Forum. John.
Thanks, Fiona. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a true delight and pleasure to be with you for this afternoon's launch. It's also very appropriate at this afternoon's launch that we reflect upon our ETB sectoral achievements as a leading provider of education training services nationally. With a budget over 22.2 billion and 32,000 staff, we have a key role to play in responding strategically to emerging trends and needs, both nationally and on the international stage. The vibrancy and responsiveness of the sector for further education training is reflected in our annual delivery of services to over 220,000 unique FET learners in over 200 FET colleges, training centres, youth and community hubs spread throughout the country. ETBI is the collective representative body of all 16 ETBs, supports the sector by promoting productive and enterprising working relationships with relevant bodies and agencies. ETBI successfully coordinates services at national level and has played a central guiding role in embedding the ambitions of the first national FET strategy that Fiona has alluded to. This inaugural strategy all those years ago represented an exciting juncture for the sector in seeking to develop an integrated system of further education and training in Ireland, which would promote economic development and meet the needs of all citizens. High-level strategic goals in the areas of skills development, active inclusion, quality provision, integrated planning and funding were identified, and ETBI forging productive partnerships with all 16 ETBs in progressing each of these goals by bringing together the very formidable expertise that exists within all our ETBs. The past 15 months of the COVID pandemic have continued to see the responsive and collective strengths of the sector at play. Contingency plans being put in place to deal with the disruption to teaching and learning, the quick transition to blended and remote learning, and the continuation of learner supports and assessments. As a sector, it was also very important during this turbulent period that we did not lose focus on strategy development as we continue to evolve our thinking and development around further education and training. We very much welcome the new further education and training strategy as a bold and ambitious strategy and build upon the sectoral achievements and moving towards a more coherent structure. The benefit of the sector's close working relationship with SOLAS and the Department of Education shone through as we collectively contributed to the development of a roadmap for the sector in addressing the economic and societal challenges facing us over the coming years. We particularly welcome the proposition to consolidate existing further education training provision within a single integrated further education college of future structure, promoting flexible learning delivery and offering essential community supports. The sector also welcomed opportunities within the strategy of broadening collaborations with higher education institutions and exploring avenues for co-delivery, for example, the successful 2+2 model as delivered in many other international jurisdictions. The sector appreciates the formation of a new Department of Further and Higher Education to progress an enterprising program for government in establishing a robust tertiary education system. Today's launching of the official position papers for the Vision for Tertiary Education and the Further Education College of the Future represents the sector's confidence and assurance in embracing these opportunities as we look forward enthusiastically to further enhancing the profile of further education and training services in this country. And Fiona, I'll pass back to you.
Thank you very much, John. It is my great pleasure now to pass over to Minister Niall Collins at the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science to officially launch our papers today. While the Minister unfortunately cannot be with us in person, we do acknowledge his support for the work of the ETBs and for the development of these papers.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted as Minister for State for Skills and Further Education to address you here today, albeit virtually, on the launch of ETBI's position papers, the Vision for Tertiary Education and the FET College of the Future. My thanks to Fiona Maloney and everyone at ETBI for their kind invitation. It has become very clear during the pandemic how important the FET sector is, not only in supporting current learners, but also in planning for the future education landscape. The importance of addressing skills needs as the Irish society and economy reopens has become one of the key priorities of our country. There are a number of transformational developments taking place within and around the sector at the moment, which will impact on how the FET sector moves forward in the coming years. Now more than ever, we need for accessible high-quality education. Opportunity highlights the importance of collaborative approach in building an inclusive tertiary sector. The FET Strategy 2020 to 2024 has committed to an ambitious programme aimed at supporting the economy through targeted reskilling and upskilling initiatives around the core pillars of building skills, fostering inclusion and facilitating pathways. Central to this strategy are the education and training boards nationally, who are in a unique position, realising the vision as they have the ability to assist in the rolling out of initiatives to respond to local labour market needs and advance the social and economic standing of geographical locations. ETBs are also ideally positioned as they have access to employers, enterprise and regional skills data regarding shortages and future needs. The sector has a nationwide range and encompassing reach and embrace all learners through a multicultural, diverse and inclusive approach. Key to delivering the FET strategy is flexibility and agility, and this is evident in the response of the ETBs through the current pandemic. ETBs responded through migration to online learning to minimise disruption and cater for all learners through blended learning and options across course provision. This has enabled learners to avail of upskilling and retraining, offering flexible education and training options for those who are unable to avail of training due to a variety of reasons, including geographical, location, and time constraints. The most affected areas of the economy include hospitality, tourism, international transport, support services, and training will have to respond most as recession and recovery progresses through vocational training, traineeships, and apprenticeship structure. Technological innovation in the way we work and live, for example in remote working and online retail, as well as in how business operates through increasing incorporation of technology in production and logistics, will play a significant part in the economy as it emerges post-pandemic. It seems inevitable that a level of upskilling will be needed as part of this response. This innovation needs to be inclusive too, and the commitment of the sector to provide digital skills and opportunities to provide the most vulnerable in our society during the pandemic in adult and community education is an ongoing need. It is within this context that I wish to launch the ETBI position paper on the FET vision for tertiary education. This paper launched today outlines the role of FET provision in facilitating direct access to the labour market and a pathway to higher education, including co-delivery models as part of a unified and inclusive tertiary education transitions framework. Greater awareness and visibility of the improved choice of pathways from level 1 to level 6 provision and within and across ETBs offers all learners signposts to progression routes and opportunities in further education, training and employment, which will be key to the country's recovery from the COVID-19 crisis, as already mentioned. In conclusion, I'm also launching the ETBI FET Vision for Tertiary Education, which outlines the position of the ETBI FET sector as a fully committed to better coherence, increased collaboration and stronger cooperation within higher education and other stakeholders. Many thanks to listening for me and best of luck with the rest of the event.
Thank you very much, Minister. We're all very appreciative of your time and consideration of our event and of our papers today. As you all know, our relationship with the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation, Science is a key enabler to achieving the ETB's vision for further education and training into the future. I'm delighted to be able to welcome Jim Breslin, Secretary General at the Department of Further and Higher Ed with Research, Innovation, Science, to address you today. So I'll pass you over to Jim.
Thanks, Fiona, and thanks to you and to John for the opportunity to contribute. I want to pay tribute to all of the work that has gone into the two documents being launched today, to ETBI, the authors, researchers, the focus groups, ETB leadership, and particularly to directors of FET for all of the work involved. It's fair to say that departmental policy papers and the strategies of public bodies are sometimes launched to a shrug of the shoulders. But on this occasion, your engagement reflects the vibrancy and enthusiasm that exists within the sector and the extent to which you've engaged both critically and comprehensively with the FET strategy and the paper on tertiary education produced by the Department of Education and Skills. And I'm sure that, like me, Andrew finds your engagement and perspective hugely encouraging. As John has said, ETBs were established in 2013, and the work you did to lift the country out of the economic recession and to enable learners to secure employment opportunities will be of enduring significance. Unfortunately, as Minister Collins has said, we are in need of a supreme effort from the sector once again. Implementation of the second FET strategy is taking place in the teeth of a global pandemic. Approaching 20% of the labour force have been out of work, when those unemployed are combined with those in receipt of the PUP. The makeup of those working in such sectors means that the young, the low-skilled and part-time workers are most affected and most at continuing risk. And COVID will accelerate major trends. Digitization and use of online channels, automation and artificial intelligence are going to mean that some jobs will not return and others are going to be displaced in the period ahead. As well as preparing school leavers for this changed world of work, FET will have a crucial role in upskilling and reskilling displaced workers if they're not to be left behind. This week at Government, a new Pathways to Work policy was approved. And also at the same meeting, a new adult literacy and numeracy and digital skills strategy was launched. And that's a strategy that Andrew and many others on the call today were instrumental in developing. Both of these policies give FET a central role in their delivery and speak to the importance of FET in the economic and social progress of our communities and our country. The vision of the FET College of the Future, which you have set out, promotes not only economic empowerment through the labour market, but crucially the personal and social growth and empowerment that is achieved through engagement in education. The FET sector works with learners every day to reimagine how they see their education, their development, and their self-identity. But strikingly, in today's papers, you have engaged wholeheartedly in reimagining how you yourself will serve these learners in the future. You've set out how you will change and develop persuasively and ambitiously. Your ambition speaks to the vibrancy and growth mindset of the sector. Your commitment to this process of change and the growth involved gives me confidence that we will achieve a key line from the vision of FET set out in the FET strategy. Namely, in 5 years, FET will have grown its profile, with FET colleges serving as beacons of learning within communities, which are widely recognised as a major driver of Ireland's next critical phase of economic and social development. Of course, you will need support in achieving this vision, but it is one that the department will be proud to advocate for. As you know, the Department of Education and Skills produced a paper on tertiary education before COVID intervened so abruptly. I want to thank you for engaging with this discussion document and providing your response. We are very fortunate that the staff involved in developing this paper are working in the new department. I think you will have seen that the issue has greatly influenced the Minister's thinking and the strategy statement of the department, which we published earlier this year. I agree with you that as set out in today's paper, that the vision for tertiary education must be one that is focused on the learner. There are three key objectives for me in building a stronger, more integrated tertiary education system. The first objective for me is informed choice. Prospective learners must have accessible information and the supports they need to choose the right learning option for them. A second objective for me is balance. There must be a balance within the system. I fully agree that the system should be unified rather than uniform. It will be made up of community education providers, FET colleges of the future, newly established technological universities with a distinct role within higher education, and traditional universities. Different parts of the tertiary education system have different but complementary roles to play. Clarity on role and purpose within this overall context is essential. At a policy level, we must continually consider the appropriate balance in the context of demographic projections, skills needs, and learner requirements. The needs of school leavers, mature learners, or lifelong learners will be different, as will the individual needs within these groupings. A balanced tertiary education system will meet this diversity in a way that is appropriate to the needs of learners. The third major objective of a tertiary education system, I believe, is around pathways. There is much that can be built upon at national and at local level, but we can further improve pathways for learners moving between settings. The word progression is most often used as representing the pathway for a learner from further education to higher education. But of course, progress for a learner can equally be achieved by movement from an initial experience in higher education to further education, or for a higher education graduate using a FET College of the Future to upskill or reskill as part of their lifelong learning. For these three objectives to be realised in practice, there is a significant programme of work required to enable the system to become more unified. This work programme includes an overarching commitment to learner participation and engagement, better and more integrated data, funding reforms in both higher education and further education, digital transformation, capital investment strategy, including a more balanced portfolio of investment across higher education and further education, and continuing regulatory developments on the part of QQI. So in conclusion, the vision you have set out in both documents aligns with that of the department. I am delighted to be part of their launch. There is a tremendous opportunity over the next 4 years to realise this vision. There will, of course, be challenges along the way, but Minister Harris, Minister Collins, and the staff of the department will work with you to overcome these. And in doing so, grow the profile of FET colleges and act as a major driver of Ireland's next critical phase of economic and social development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. The support that ETBs receive, both from yourself and your department, and as well as the ministers, is very much appreciated and certainly has been integral to the development of the ETBs and our whole further education training sector. The education and training boards and the directors of further education training across the country have a very strong relationship with SOLAS. And I'm delighted that Andrew Brownlee, Chief Executive of SOLAS, is also with us here today. Andrew, with his team in SOLAS, in partnership with education training boards, are leading the transformation of further education training. And I'm delighted to welcome Andrew to speak with you now.
Thanks very much, Fiona, and good afternoon to everyone there. I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head there, Fiona. You know, this is very much about a partnership, and I think the great thing about today and the real reason we really welcome these two position papers is, you know, because it really does represent that kind of spirit of partnership, and it shows the ETBs, I think, really taking a leadership role in terms of some key areas that we need to focus on kind of moving forward. So we really welcome that as SOLAS. And I think, you know, if you think back to 2018, when we just kind of started the journey of looking at strategic performance agreements and looking at, you know, core system objectives and core system targets that we could work collectively on achieving. I think we said a phrase at that point, I think was maybe greeted with a fair bit of skepticism about the ETBs. And, you know, we said that the first few years since 2013, since SOLAS was created and the ETBs were kind of established, was really about, you know, getting the organisations up and running, getting a kind of feel for, you know, what we were required to do, you know, matching our kind of capabilities to different roles and responsibilities. But, you know, in 2018, we said that the next phase really was about empowering ETBs. And I think like that is where we're at right now. I think if you look at the way that we're looking at the future FET strategy, which as you mentioned is all about transforming learning, you know, we really do believe that is about a partnership involving the department as a policymaker, SOLAS as the kind of the funder and the shaper of strategy, and then ETB as the provider, and QQI as the quality assurer. So in the FET implementation structures, that's the kind of core, I suppose, delivery grouping that we really are focusing on to try and steer the journey through transforming learning. And I think work like this really represents, you know, what we want the ETBs to do, to look at, you know, well, how can we transform learning? How can we transform provision? You know, how can we come together, use the incredible insight and knowledge that we have in this space to really kind of drive change and drive a way forward. So it's really good to see, and look, I appreciate it's no mean feat to try and bring 16 very distinct and very diverse ETBs together, which is a big attribute that you have, and try and come up with common positions and, you know, common ways forward. But I think you've really done well in both of these documents, you know, and kind of setting out, you know, what you think the future means in terms of tertiary and what it means in terms of FET College of the future. Just briefly on each of the documents, I mean, in terms of the FET College of the future, I think when we think about it, we need to maybe park those historical perceptions of what a college is, because I know it means so many different things to different people. You know, for some, it can mean that the College of FE, Further Education, or the PLC college. You know, I mean, people here talk about going to college and they mean it to be higher ed. You know, we even have many second level schools called colleges. So we, in a way, we almost need to kind of park all of those kind of preconceived notions and really talk about reinventing, you know, the term within that FET College of the Future context, because we do mean something much broader than those kind of narrow definitions of the past. And really, you know, when Solace started working with ETBs and others around, you know, what do we really want in future, and what do we want the FET College of the Future to mean? I mean, it really is about maybe 3 or 4 very simple concepts, and it's great to see them reflected in the document. First of all, it's about integration between further education and training, because if you're not going to think about how we're going to do that and how we're going to create a more cohesive offering for learners at all stages of their lifetimes and careers, you know, what was the real point in bringing that national training infrastructure together with the county-based further education provision in 2013. So I think that has to be at the heart of it. Scale is obviously also at the heart of it, you know, and consolidation. You know, there are, while it's really important we have community-based resources, there are, you know, facilities that are too small, that are, you know, based on legacy infrastructure that aren't fit for purpose anymore. And I think we need to use FET College of the Future to look at how we consolidate those into, you know, more like better quality, larger scale offerings. But then I think it's really important that you build on that and you make sure that there's a consistent and distinct kind of learner offering, you know, and you can use that to build a distinct identity and brand that people can really tune into, you know. And I think we're very conscious. Solace doesn't mean a lot to people. I think, you know, while ETBs are very respected in their regions, we're trying to get that brand that will really entice people into learning and entice them into continuing to learn. That's a trick, and that's where I think the FET College of the Future can play a really important role kind of moving forward. So all of that stuff in the paper, I think we would really really kind of agree with and buy into. But that doesn't mean that, you know, a FET College of the Future has to look the same in every single ETB area. You know, the part of the beauty of the ETBs is they're so different and they represent such different regions with such different characteristics. You know, so we really do recognise that FET College of the Future is going to look a little bit different and should look a bit different depending on where you're in the country. And, you know, if we use that to try and look and work at, you know, organisational structures, capital investment strategy, you know, common centralised learner support, two-way communication channels. I mean, that really is the answer to making this a success. And I think that the importance of acknowledging that if we use those communication channels to harness the potential of the 10,000 staff that you have working in further education and training, the 200,000 learners that you deliver education and services to every year, you know, if you can harness that power and that commitment, then, you know, it really is going to be a big asset kind of moving forward. So really welcome all of the thinking and the insight in the FET College of the Future paper. And on the tertiary education one, probably a bit of a wider kind of a wider space. But I think it's been great to see the ETBs can almost step out of the comfort zone and maybe be the first to put their heads above the parapet to say, you know, we're going to come up with a perspective on what tertiary means to all of us. And I think the vision that you've set out, that tertiary isn't just about, you know, that level 5, 6, 7, 8 space, you know, that almost the kind of school leaver space, but actually it's about continuum of learning from level 1 to level 10. I mean, I think that's really, really important, because what we're trying to do, and I think what the department is trying to do, is create a system of education that you can dip in and dip out of throughout lifetimes and careers, and continually upskill and reskill. And you really need that vision. It's not an either or, and it's not linear either. You know, we all know that we have many higher education graduates who come back in to do a FET course at level 3, level 4, level 5, level 6. And that's the type of space that we need to build on and do more of. So look, I think there's so much in there to admire and to build on. I think, you know, as Jim said, you know, the idea of a unified, not a uniform system of transitions is really important. The focus you put on internal pathways, I mean, that is critical as well. It's not just about FET to HE, it's about that continual kind of learning pathway throughout the whole system as well. And I think we've got a lot of good thinking here. I think the next key challenge for us, Solace as a funder, and I think for ETBs as the providers, is how do we action some of this? How do we move this forward? And I think in recent months we've been really encouraged by the kind of leadership and the proactive role that the ETBs have taken on areas of priority flagged by the Minister, like how do we get FET and apprenticeship options, alongside HE choices as part of the CAO? How do we start delivering on the green skills agenda? How do we lead the recovery through the kind of skills to compete, kind of upskilling and reskilling initiatives for those left unemployed as a result of COVID, who are now going to be coming off the PUP? I think it's been great to see ETBs get their teeth into that and come forward with ideas and proposals and move things forward. And I really think that is the future, to go beyond these kind of position papers and vision papers and start talking about tangible projects and tangible initiatives that ETBs can lead and really drive that transformation and learning in the future. So I hope that's useful as an initial overview, Fiona, and congratulations again on all the work. Thanks to everyone who contributed to it, and it's great to see it out there.
Thank you, Andrew. As always, your comments are very welcome, and I'm sure the directors across the country agree that they're ready, willing and able, as always, to respond to all of the challenges that are presented to us. And we look forward to meeting those challenges and coming up with those actions as we progress with you in partnership into the future. The papers that we've launched today are the culmination, as you know, of a lot of work, but also of vision and of ambition of the Directors of Further Education and Training across the 16 ETBs. The directors are represented today here by Sadie Ward-McDermott, who is the chair of the Strategy and Policy Group of the Directors Forum. Sadie, with a number of colleagues from that group, have led on the development and realisation of the papers that are being launched today. So I would like to call on Sadie to address you and to give you the thoughts from the directors.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Good afternoon, everybody. To date this afternoon, we have heard a number of valuable perspectives on the launch of these two sectoral papers, the ETB FET Vision for Tertiary Education and the FET College of the Future. The ambitious goals of a vibrant FET sector, occupying a pivotal role in skills development at the forefront of the national economy, are coupled with the duality of a FET sector that is inclusive, offering multiple points of entry and progression for all learners to engage. These two complementary elements are the hallmark of FET provision to date and are the dual pillars that the vision of FET contained in these papers will be built upon. In embarking on realising this vision, the FET sector is approaching it from a position of strength. The ETB FET sector has a strong tradition in responding quickly and flexibly to national economic and social priorities, and this will be required in the months and years ahead. The way forward in the shorter term must be to build on systems and good practice we already have or are in the process of developing. The ETBs have a strong tradition of collaboration with community partners, state agencies and governmental departments, which will be necessary in envisaging the dynamic vision contained in these papers. This process is underway already through the work of FET coordinators, community education facilitators, in liaison with community-based services, which act as vital stepping stones for many adult learners. Similarly, training provision actively engaging with employers and stakeholder fora to enable and support the creation and development of new apprenticeships, traineeships in areas as diverse as finance, ICT, and biopharma, to name but a few. These are informed heavily through industry consultation and input. The balancing act is to deliver overall coherence within the system, while at the same time encompassing and protecting diversification. Extensive collaboration and strong system linkages are therefore critical, as is the ongoing support, as stated here this afternoon of the Department of Further and Higher Education Research, Innovation and Science in supporting this ambitious vision as part of the future FET Transforming Learning Strategy. Enhanced linkages between FET and HE are indeed embedded within these two papers, which envisages greater integration between sectors for learners, leading to complementarity, not competing provision. The creation of clearly identified and sequential pathways within education and training are of paramount importance. Pathways must be available to learners starting from post-primary schools, linking with further education and training, providing a continuing progression route through levels 1 to 6, and with ETBs located in communities as co-providers of tertiary courses in the 2+2 model already mentioned this afternoon. This is coupled with developments of skills closely aligned to economic market demand with strong prospects for employment. In the past year, we have seen the real need for digital technologies to support teaching and learning in a positive, meaningful way. The ETB sector will continue engaging with the department, SOLAS, and national stakeholders in order to transform the structures which will be responsive, agile, and which will form a basis for the new integrated overarching FET College with a consistent and inclusive centralized framework of learner support services required to underpin such FET provision. William Blake was credited with stating, "There are things that are known and things that are unknown, and in between there are doors." As we prepare to welcome learners back to our centres in the months ahead, the necessity for centralised and coordinated supports will be more prevalent than ever before. However, the doors of choices, options, and possibilities presented through the greater strategic vision of the sector and the opportunities for learners to reimagine and reinvent through participation in further education and training is what sets these papers presented here today as seminal in the course of FET provision in Ireland. I acknowledge the unwavering support and work of Directors of Further Education and Training and ETBI staff teams in enabling and supporting the development of these two papers, which I commend to you today. Thank you, and I pass you back to Fiona.
Thank you very much, Sadie. And I'm sure it's a very important day, as you all realise, in the trajectory of FET, and an important day for the Directors of Further Education and Training across the country to have their work recognised and launched today by the Minister and supported by both Jim Breslin and Andrew Brownlee from the Department and from SOLAS. So we're very grateful for that. ETBs are the statutory providers of education training across the country and have continuously demonstrated not only their agility, but their ability and their adaptability in meeting all of the challenges that are presented to them. So I would like now to call on Mr. Dennis Leamy on behalf of the ETBs, who is also co-chair of the Director of Further Education and Training Forum in ETBI, to share with you his reflections on today and on the papers.
Thanks very much, Fiona. And indeed, if I suppose we reflect on the very strong reflections over the last 50 minutes, I was particularly struck by a number of things that were said, not just in terms of the focus on the papers, but I suppose in terms of the wider facets of further education and training. And I suppose the challenge that the Minister has put to us is being a vital part of the recovery, and how central FET will be to that vital part of the recovery. And Jim continued that in terms of I suppose, if we look at the changing nature of things, especially through COVID, where we need to focus our efforts in terms of the low skilled, young people, the people that are most at risk, and also with that, the changing nature of work, which has been exacerbated. We knew it was always going to happen, but it really has been exacerbated over the last 18 months, and how we have to be agile and flexible in responding. And I suppose using that word that Jim used, the reimagining our response is going to be critical to that as well, in terms of how we serve for the future. And I thought it was really useful to put it in the context of those three particular focuses on the learner, in terms of if you look at it through the lens of the informed choice. Also taking up the purpose in the paper, the second part around the balance, that we're not talking about creating the same everywhere, but it's different and complementary, so we're meeting the needs of everyone that could possibly engage. And then those different pathways, that it's not just a linear pathway, it's also about dipping in and dipping back to a whole range of efforts. That's a challenge to all of us. And then how digital transformation can underpin that change, and as we've seen the value that's given over the last year. In Andrew's pieces and reflections, I think Andrew reflected very strongly the partnership that's there across from the department to SOLAS to QQI to the ETBs, in terms of driving this delivery over the past, since 2013, but now more importantly into the future, in terms of transforming learning. And I think, Andrew, you put a challenge to us, which I think we've all been working on, but we need to be always mindful of, is the internal piece that we need to also continue to work on, between the training side and the further education side. And then speaking to a bit to that scale and consolidation, that is a challenge, but what it offers, and that we need to look at harnessing the power of that collective sector that we are, and we heard from John earlier on in terms of the overall piece. And then Sadie gave us a very good overview of the papers and the work that went into that. But I suppose it's a start, and it's back to that call for action, what we do next and how we build on that. So I think it's fair to say that as like we've been saying for a while, that the current time really is an exciting one for further education, and the creation of a dedicated department and the Future FET strategy reflects the government's commitment and the belief in higher and further education elements of the tertiary education sector, which we saw reflected here today. And at a regional level, through the 16 ETBs, our ambition is to develop these links further over the coming months and years, with seamless transitions for learners between the further and higher education, co-developed programs and resources. And again, as we gradually move out of COVID and the shadow of COVID, that we are ready and prepared to meet the challenges of ensuring that there's an appropriate pathway for every learner, and that we can offer a range of options for people to reskill, upskill for that ever-changing world of learning and work. So I'd like to, on behalf of our colleagues, to thank all of our speakers this afternoon, especially Minister Niall Collins, Secretary General Jim Breslin, and CEO of SOLAS Andrew Brownlee, for their valuable contributions. It's really appropriate that we have representation at the most senior level from the Department of Further and Higher Ed, as not only have you set out the clear strategy for the FET sector and the reform to date, but as we've heard from the Minister and Jim, will continue to do so as we strive to realise the vision of a holistic, flexible and vibrant education sector in Ireland. We, of course, will continue our extensive work with Andrew and colleagues in SOLAS through the 16 ETBs in reaching out to learners and offering them a variety of options for personal, social and economic empowerment. And it's through that collaborative between the ETB, SOLAS and ETBI, we will not only contribute to this vision, but lead the sector in establishing what we see as a unified, integrated, inclusive and progressive FET sector in Ireland. Finally, I just want to acknowledge a good number of people that have been involved in building towards this event today. It didn't just happen over the last couple of weeks, and I really want to thank for all the people that put the work into the papers. You heard from Sadie Ward McDermott, and also the other colleagues that were in that strategy policy working group, along with Antonine Healy and others, and working on those papers, and colleagues right across the country, FET directors, for the months of work that they put into that. Also in ETBI, Tanya Jones, Rachel Cusack and Fergus Craddock in ETBI for organising all the technical and graphic supports for today, and it's an in-house event, so congrats to them on the event, the work that they put into that, and the publication of the papers. And of course, I'm really because to Fiona Maloney for pulling all of this and us together in putting the event together and the launch of the papers. And it's absolutely fantastic to see we've almost 200 people online on a Friday afternoon in July for this event, and I think that shows the keen interest and commitment that there is to the FET sector and in developing the FET sector for the future. So a big thanks to all of you for tuning in. So I'll now bring the launch to a close, and I wish you all a good and safe weekend. Slán go fóill.